You may have heard some of these stories. The fall of Adam and Eve, Noah who built an ark for the flood, Abraham who was willing to sacrifice his own son to God. All of these stories are in the book of Genesis, the first book of the Bible. But what lessons can we learn from them? The book of Genesis clearly reveals that God is the creator of everything. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Genesis 1:1. Before anything existed, God already was, eternal and sovereign, and by His word, He brought the universe into existence. On the first day, God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Genesis 1:3. Separating light from darkness and establishing the cycle of day and night. On the second day, He created the firmament, separating the waters above from the waters below, forming the sky. Genesis 1:6 through 8. On the third day, God commanded the waters to gather, bringing forth the sea and revealing dry land, and He caused vegetation to grow, plants, trees, and seeds, each according to its kind. Genesis 1:9-13. On the fourth day, He created the heavenly bodies, the sun, the moon, and the stars, to govern the day and the night, and to mark times and seasons. Genesis 1:14-19. On the fifth day, God filled the waters and the skies with living creatures, fish, birds, and all forms of aquatic and aerial life. Genesis 1:20-23. On the sixth day, He brought forth the land animals, each according to its kind, and finally, human beings, created in His image and likeness, male and female, with dominion over all creation. Genesis 1:24-27. When He finished, God looked upon all that He had made and declared, "God saw all that He had made, and it was very good." Genesis 1:31. On the seventh day, God rested from all His work of creation, establishing the principle of rest and the holiness of time. Genesis 2:2-3. Each stage of creation reveals God's power, wisdom, and purpose. Recognizing God as Creator reminds us of the value of life and the responsibility we have over creation, since we were made in His image and likeness. Genesis 1:27. Destined to reflect His glory in everything we do. The second lesson from the book of Genesis shows us that human beings have a unique value and a great responsibility in God's creation. Created in the image and likeness of God, each person reflects the glory of the Creator and possesses innate dignity. God blessed the man and the woman and gave them a clear purpose. God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, and over every living creature that moves on the ground." Genesis 1:28. This passage highlights two essential responsibilities: to multiply, ensuring the continuity of humanity, and to exercise responsible dominion over all creation. Being stewards of the earth means caring for, protecting, and using its resources wisely, respecting God's plan. The value of human beings is not only in their existence, but also in their ability to fulfill the divine purpose, to live in communion with God, respect creation, and exercise authority with justice and wisdom. Recognizing this mission reminds us that every action has an impact and that we are called to honor God in everything we do. The third lesson from the book of Genesis shows that sin always brings serious consequences. The story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden is the first example. God created them perfect, placing them in an environment of communion with Him, but gave them only one instruction: "You are free to eat from any tree in the garden, but you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, for when you eat from it, you will certainly die." Genesis 2:16-17. When they disobeyed, they chose to follow their own desires instead of God's will, resulting in spiritual separation, shame, and expulsion from the garden. This story teaches us that sin is never without consequences. It affects our relationship with God, with others, and even our physical and social life. Obedience to God protects and sustains, while disobedience leads to pain, loss, and destruction. The fourth lesson from the book of Genesis shows us that God deeply knows the human heart, discerning intentions beyond outward actions. The story of Cain and Abel is a clear example. Both offered sacrifices to God, but only Abel's was accepted. The Lord looked with favor on Abel and his offering, but on Cain and his offering he did not look with favor. Genesis 4:4-5. The difference was not only in the type of offering, but in each one's motivation. Abel offered with faith and sincerity, while Cain acted superficially and with a wrong heart. God warned Cain about the sin that was haunting him, saying, "If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it." Genesis 4:7. Despite the warning, Cain gave in to envy and killed his brother, showing that a corrupted heart leads to destructive actions. This story teaches us that God is not deceived by appearances. He sees what is hidden and calls each person to reflect on their intentions, reminding us that true obedience begins in the heart. The fifth lesson from the book of Genesis clearly shows that faith pleases God, being the foundation of a life of obedience and trust in His promises. A remarkable example is Noah. Despite living in a corrupt world and without rain, he obeyed God and built the ark according to the divine instructions. Noah trusted in God's word even without visible evidence, demonstrating that faith requires action. Another powerful example is Abraham. God had promised him that he would be the father of many nations. Later, God called him to sacrifice his son Isaac as a test of obedience. Then God said, "Take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering." Genesis 22:2. Abraham obeyed, trusting that God would fulfill his promises even in the face of the impossible. His faith was rewarded when God provided a ram as a substitute. These stories show that true faith is trusting in God even without fully understanding His plans, and that obedience motivated by faith pleases the Lord. The sixth lesson from the book of Genesis shows us that God is faithful to His promises, fulfilling them even when they seem impossible for humans. A remarkable example is Abraham. God promised that he would be the father of a great nation. "I will surely bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, and as the sand on the seashore." Genesis 22:1. Although Abraham and Sarah were old and childless, he trusted in God's promise, and at the right time, Sarah gave birth to Isaac. Another example is Noah, to whom God promised preservation during the flood. "But I will establish my covenant with you." Genesis 6:18. God fulfilled His word, saving Noah, his family, and the animals in the ark. After the flood, God reaffirmed His faithfulness by making a covenant with the whole earth, promising never again to destroy life with water. "I establish my covenant with you. Never again will all life be destroyed by the waters of a flood. Never again will there be a flood to destroy the earth." Genesis 9:11. As a sign of this covenant, God placed the rainbow in the clouds, reminding everyone of His faithfulness. These stories teach us that trusting in God's promises is safe, for He fulfills His words regardless of human circumstances. Before we move on to the final lesson, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any Bible content. Leave a comment sharing what God has spoken to you through these lessons in the book of Genesis. Like the video to support the channel and share it with your friends and family. Every like, comment, and subscription helps bring God's Word to more people. The seventh lesson from the book of Genesis shows that God honors those who remain faithful to Him, even amid difficulties. A striking example is Joseph, who demonstrated faithfulness to God in every situation. Sold as a slave by his own brothers, Joseph was taken to Egypt, but maintained his integrity and trust in the Lord. While serving in Potiphar's house, he refused to yield to the advances of his master's wife. But he refused and said to his master's wife, "How then? Could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" Genesis 39:9. Despite being falsely accused and imprisoned, Joseph remained faithful. His faithfulness was rewarded when God exalted him, placing him as ruler over all the land of Egypt. The Lord was with Joseph so that he prospered. Genesis 39:23. Joseph's story teaches us that faithfulness to God may require patience and perseverance, but it is never in vain. God observes every act of integrity and honors those who obey Him, turning adverse situations into blessings and fulfilling His plans for those who trust in Him. And these were the 7 main lessons we can learn from the book of Genesis. From the creative power of God, the value and responsibility of human beings, to the importance of faith, obedience, and faithfulness. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to watch the next one, where we will continue exploring other profound topics of the Bible.